So I've talked about how I'm planning to buy a Tesla Model 3 at some point. It's going to most likely be my next car, but I've held off for a few reasons. First, I wanted to see what the leasing options are whenever that comes out. I still feel it's kind of weird to buy an electric car. I don't know how it's going to do in the long term. I don't know what the resale value is going to be. And more importantly, I know there's going to be a feature in 3 years that I'm going to want or that I'm not going to be able to get with the Model 3. And it's just going to happen. So for me, a Tesla is one area where I think leasing actually makes sense. I also knew that there would be different models coming up, and just a few weeks ago we saw the finally $35,000 model become available. So if I bought something right before that, I would have been kind of upset. But more importantly, I knew that the Tesla Model Y was coming, and I just wanted to see what that was because I felt like it's irresponsible to buy the car right before I know this new car is going to be announced. Now, I was lucky enough to attend the Model Y event, so I've seen the car, I've been in the car, and I left that event thinking one thing. They're both the same car. The Model 3 and the Model Y are almost exactly the same. Now, of course, it's very obvious that these cars are very much related, but even more so than with the S to the X, you can tell that these are basically just the same cars with a little bit of a difference. The main thing that you'll see is you get a hatchback with the Model Y and you get that third row seat, so you can seat 7. So you get a little bit more of a sloping roof line. It's a little bit taller, and on the inside you also get a more of a panoramic roof, so there's nothing in the middle. That's actually pretty cool. When we were riding inside, we asked what's different here because they look the same, and they literally said it's the same. There's nothing different between the Model 3 and the Model Y in the interior except for that third row seat, and the seats themselves are sitting a little higher. That is the only difference. But it's interesting that the Model Y is coming out now rather than when the Model 3 was released. It almost makes more sense for the US market especially to do the crossover first because crossovers are extremely popular. They sell more than almost any other segment. But I think there's one main reason why the Model 3 came out first, even though it probably makes more sense for the Y to be the main car. And that's just price. The Model Y is more expensive than the Model 3, and I think it was very important for Tesla to hit that $35,000 price point. Even though that's still not very cheap compared to a lot of cars on the market, it's still significantly cheaper than what you saw in the past. Building the Model Y first just would have cost more money, so they wouldn't necessarily have hit that lower price point, which I think for the brand was extremely important. Once they hit that point, people kind of thought oh, this is actually something I might be able to buy, even though technically it was still very expensive. But now you have both options. You have the Model 3 at its cheaper price point, and then you have the Model Y, which I think appeals to even more people. So for me, when looking at buying one of these cars, the Model Y has actually convinced me to just buy the Model 3 because they are so similar. Yes, you get that third row, but personally, I don't really need it. And in all honesty, the third row barely exists. You're not really gonna be fitting very many people back there. I do kind of like that it sits a little taller, but that's more of an aesthetic thing. It doesn't really change how I'm going to use the car. And more importantly for me, I don't have to wait until 2021 or whenever to actually get this car. I can go order one now, and in California at least, I can get it in 2 weeks. So I think, of course, it's all gonna come down to your personal use case, but if you were hoping that the Model Y was gonna be some totally different car, it just isn't. Tesla themselves admits it's just a Model 3 that's a little bit more SUV-like. I mean, that is what a crossover is, so it makes sense. So should you buy a Model Y? I think if you're in the market for one of these cars, unless you're not in a hurry at all, or you really desperately need that hatchback and a little bit more room in the back, I think just go for the Model 3. You can get it today, you're saving some money, and you're really not missing out on anything.